Hello and welcome to Last Web. Today I'm going to be showing you how to send information from your HTML form to your mail address, and I'm just going to go ahead and show you how it works. Let me just select some input, and when I click on send, I'm automatically directed to this thank you page. And if I come to my mail right here, I should have a new mail from my contact form. As you can see, these are the details I just imputed. And to go ahead with this tutorial, you need to have Node.js installed. So you can just go ahead to their website, nodejs.org, and download and install Node.js. So first off, we need to start by installing our dependencies. And I'm just going to go ahead and open a folder. Let me create a new one. I'll call this contact form. And I'll go ahead and open my terminal. And to install my dependencies, I'm going to do npx create next app. And I'm going to add this full stop just to make sure everything gets installed in this current directory. Yes, we use TypeScript. No, yes, no, yes, yes, and no. So once our Next.js dependencies are installed, I'm going to go ahead and install Node Mailer, which is the package you are going to be using to send mails. And then lastly, we are going to install hero icons. Now once that is done, I'm just going to go ahead and run my server, npm run dev. And as you can see, it's currently running at localhost 3000. So I'll just go ahead and minimize this. Yeah, as you can see, we have the default Next.js template. So I'm going to come here and copy a form, which is a Tailwind forms. And you have to come to their main website. So I'll just click on this. And this is the code we are going, the form we are going to be using for this tutorial. So you go ahead and copy it and make sure it's on React. Now I'm going to come here and replace our default page with the code I just copied. And I'll change the name here. Instead of example, I'll change it to home. So let's just view this on our browser. And let me just split my screen. And I'll just click on Ctrl B to take away the sideline. Let me just do this. So you can see we have our form. So let me make the form a little bit more stylish. Let me add some padding. And let me give it a header. So here's our form. We are not going to be using all these inputs, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete some. Also, we'll not be using this street address to postal code. So let me go ahead and delete them also. Also, if you come down here, you will see we have some default checked values. So I'm just going to go ahead. Okay, look at it here. I'll just delete this. And I'll also search for default checked and also delete this. Then lastly, you can see we have save here. I'm going to change that to submit or send, anyone. And I'll also delete this cancel button. So let's see how our form looks like now. So this is our form. So what we are going to be using to send information is basically an input. We are going to be using name and value. So for name to work here, we have to change this to work with JavaScript. So I'll just change this to, I'll click on Ctrl Shift L on Windows and just change it to push notification. And I'm going to give each of these radio buttons values. So this value should be push nothing. And I'll do the same for all the radio buttons. Also, I'll do the same for my checkboxes here. Rather, each of these are having only a single word, so we don't need to edit them. I'll go ahead and edit our select button here. Let me just search country. And we need to place values for each of our option here. And also let's do the same for first name and last name. Ctrl Shift L, first name. Now I'll do the same here. Ctrl Shift L, last name. Now I'm going to go ahead and create an empty object, which is where all our input will be stored to be sent to the server. And I'm just going to call this init values, initial values. And this will be an object, and this should contain all the input names. First var first name, Yeah, that's it. So you have to make sure the name you are using here are the same with the name in your inputs, all your inputs. So I'll just minimize this. And I'll come here and I'll create a useState variable. Let's call these values. And the initial values of the useState will be the object we just created here, init values. Now I'm getting an error here, so you have to import useState. You have to import useState from React, and in order for this to work, this also needs to be a user client. So I'll just put use client here. useState is not defined. Let me refresh this. Yeah, so now our form is working. So next up, what we want is anytime I input something here, I want the value to go to this object right here. So I'll just create a function for that, and we'll call this handle change. And this is going to be an arrow function. And in this function, we are going to be getting the input that called the function, and I'll do target here, and we'll extract its target, and I'll just give this a type of any. So why am I getting an error here? Okay, the error is gone. And I'll also create another function called handle checked, and this will be similar with this, but instead of the value, we are checking if it's checked. So I'll call this handle checked. And this handle check will be only for our checkboxes here. So let's go ahead and apply each of these functions to the inputs. So for first name, last name, email address, all we are going to be using handle change. So for our checkboxes here, we are going to be using handle checked instead. And so we are done with that. So anytime I select an input and type into the input, it gets saved to our object right here, and you will see a proof of that shortly. Next up, we are going to create a function, and this function is what should happen when we click on our submit button or our send button in this case. So I'm just going to create another function. I'll call this on submit. And we are also going to get the form that called the function. So I'll just do E here, and E should be a type of form event. HTML form element, right? And I'm going to prevent the default way form is handled in HTML. So I'll do e.prevent default. And to just show you that anything we click here gets saved to our values, I'm just going to go ahead and console values, console.log values. And let's give it a test here. So let me just type some input. Okay, I have not assigned this to the form. Sorry about that. So let's come to our form and then on submit. So let me click on send. Let me come to my input, to my console rather. You can see we have an object here, and these are the inputs we just selected. As you can see, Mishak Daniel, Mishak Kanchok Daniel. So these are the inputs we just selected. So now we are certain that all the input we put, it gets saved in values. So I'm going to be sending a fetch request to our route handler, and I'll do that by creating fetch, and we are going to be fetching from API slash, and we are going to be using the post method. And we are going to create a promise here, just in case we get an error. So all we're doing here is when the submit button is clicked, we want to fetch using the post method to our route handler, and if we get an invalid response, let it throw the error saying failed to send message. So next up, let us create our route handler path. So I'm just going to come here and maximize this. I'll do the same for Visual Studio. And we need to create a route handler. But before we do that, let me just configure our node mailer package. And I'll be importing node mailer from node mailer. And we'll be using two constants here, email and password. Let me just leave this empty. We'll fill that up just now. And we'll need to create a transporter. If you're not familiar with node mailer, I'll suggest you just go to their docs and just read on how it works. So we need to create a transporter. I'll just call this const transporter. Also, we'll make this export because we are exporting it to our route handler page. And we are going to be using Gmail. There are other services available, but for this tutorial, we are using Gmail. I'll just create another constant. I'll call this mail options. So what I'm just saying is I'm creating a transporter that is using the service Gmail, and I'm using this authentication method with my email and password, and I'm also sending from the same email to the same email, because you have to send the mail to your own email. You won't have access to send it to another person's email. So we have to fill up for the variable or the constant for email and password. So I'm going to use my email, lastyearwebs@gmail.com. But here you are not using your default password, so you have to create an app password. So I'll just go to my browser and show you how to do that. So I'll just search Google account. So this is not the account I'm using, so let me just switch it. And I'll just come to security. I think so. And I'll just search app password. Mind you, you need to have two verification enabled before you can do this. So app password. And I'm going to just create another password. So you can see I've gotten a password. So I'll just copy this, and this will be my password for node mailer. So you have to create yours. Don't copy mine. I'll delete it in few minutes. And so we are done with the configuration for node mailer by pasting the password here. So next up, we need to create our route handler path. So I'm just going to come to app, and I'll create a new folder, API, and I'll create our route.ts file. Now you need to notice that I'm not adding an extra folder because I do not add any default extra folder here. So if in your case your page is /contact, then you need to create an extra folder here called contact, and then your route.ts will be inside. So I'll just go ahead and delete this and come back to route.ts, and I'm just going to create a post function. And this will be a type of request. So just to make sure that we are receiving the data we sent from our page.tsx, I'm just going to console out our data. And let me go ahead and try this. Let me bring out my terminal. And let me just type some inputs again. And let me click on send. Let's come back here. So as you can see, we have received the data we sent from our page. Don't mind the error, it will be cleared out soon. And here I'm going to be importing the constant I created from NodeMailer. So I'll do import. So to send messages using NodeMailer is very straightforward. I'm getting an error here. What could the error be? Okay. Transporter. I think I didn't spell it well. So we no longer have errors. So let me just go ahead and show you how to send a message using NodeMailer. So I'll just put this in a try catch block. And I'm going to destructure mail options. And I'm going to add a subject. And this should say contact form. And then lastly, I can add either text. I can send this as a text or as HTML. So let me just show you how you send it as a text. So let me just write message came through. And let's try sending this mail. Let me add the catch block. And let me also return a response. So return, we're going to be using next response. So you make sure you import it, next response from next/server, and it's going to be in JSON format. So let me just go ahead and try this, and I'm going to open my mail here. So let me try sending a mail. Let me refresh this. So as you can see, we just got a message saying message came through. So you see, we are doing this using text. We are using this doing text, using text. So this is the text I said I wanted to send. We'll probably make this dynamic, but I'm not going to be using text. Instead, I'm going to be using HTML. So I can add some styles to it. And using HTML, let me just create a HTML file here. Let me just call this t.html. I'll delete this in a minute. And we're just going to create a HTML component. And we want to have a div. Let me give it a width of 50% and a margin of auto. And let's also give it a padding. Let's say padding 10. And lastly, let's give it a border. Let's make it black and let it be dotted. So let's see how this looks on our browser. And let me just open this. So you can see how it looks. So we can go ahead and use this. But let me add an header. So let this say contact form. I'll just go ahead and delete this text. And I'll copy this. Now let me just delete this. Move to recycle bin. And let me paste my HTML file here. Now let me try sending a message again. Now when I click on send, I should receive a mail in seconds. Here is it. And you see now we have some styles because we are using HTML. So let me just go ahead and put the values I want to send. But before I do that, I'm going to create a function that will list out all the values coming out of our data here. So let me just create the function. Let's call it data to HTML. And this will be a type of object. So all this is doing is when I give it the data, it's going to use the object.entries to show me a message containing the key and the value of that object. So we are going to apply this to our data here. So I'll just go ahead and add this here. So let's do another header tree. No, rather, we're just going to add our function here, data to HTML. And we're going to be sending data. That is this data we're getting from our page.tsx. So let's try this and see if it works. And click on send. So we just got our file. Okay, send undefined here. What could the issue be? Okay, sorry, we did not return any value here, so I'll go ahead and do return string. So let's try that again. Send. So you see we just got our mail having all the inputs. So with that, I think we are almost done with this tutorial. Finally, we can just send a router so that each time the send button is being pressed, it should send us to another page called a thank you page. So let me just create that. Let me just create a thank you page. So let me just go ahead and view this thank you page. Yeah, so our thank you page is ready. So let's just go and edit our function in our page.tsx. And so all I'm going to do here is just to reference use router. So I'll just create a constant. So this is coming from next/navigation. So make sure you import it. And we are going to be routing to our thank you page after all this. So let's go ahead and test this. So let's refresh, and let me select different values this time. So you see, as soon as we are done, we have been redirected to the thank you page. And when I come to my email here, I should have a new message. And with that, we've come to the end of the tutorial. Thank you for watching.